My name is Enongo Lumumba Kasongo, and I am a rapper and producer who goes by the name SAMMUS. I'm also an assistant professor in the music department here at Brown. If I were stranded on an island, I would want to have snacks because what I've realized in my life as an artist is that when I feel good, the art flows from me. I think we can often have this really kind of toxic relationship with the production process where it feels like suffering is the only way that like true art or real art comes into being. And as I get older and have a greater appreciation for my body and how it functions and what it needs, I realize that honoring that is actually the way that I produce the best stuff, the way that I can show up for myself. This kind of current iteration of my work where I am a rapper under the name SAMMUS who produces and raps over her production, that started when I was in a really interesting phase in my life. I was in between undergrad and grad school, and I was in I was a fourth grade math and science teacher, and I was kind of trying to find my purpose and feeling really out of control because the students were coming in with so many challenges they were facing, and I felt like I wasn't able to impact them in the ways that I wanted to. I felt like a little bit insignificant. And so I was really striving to find something that I could have control over. I could have something that felt like mine, a special thing. And so I kind of found my way to making beats on my laptop and then putting words over those beats about my experience. And when I thought about what should I rap about? I'm a nerd. I'm just a big nerd and geek. I love my comic books and my video games and my books and movies. And so it felt like speaking about those things was really authentic to who I was. And then I realized as I was kind of sharing my experience that a lot of other folks were resonating with the things I was saying. I think particularly within the hip hop space, kind of being a Black woman nerd is an underexplored, undervalued kind of part of our experience. And so I think having me express, have conversations about things that speak to the experience of being a Black woman in America, colorism, racism, sexism, my experience of navigating academia later on, doing those things and framing them through these sort of geek and nerd tropes felt like it was bringing together, parts of my life and bringing together communities who didn't often feel like they were sort of seen or reflected in the hip hop spaces that I was first kind of drawn to. I got my Ph.D. in science and technology studies, and I was making music while I was pursuing my Ph.D., but I didn't feel like there was a way to bring these universes together, and was actually kind of actively trying to create a sort of split between them. I felt like, okay, music is where I'm most myself. Music is where I speak the truth of my life, and my academic work is where I tell the facts of the story. And of course that all disintegrated. Even that idea, right, is something that STS plays with. But I really felt like these were distinct parts of my life. And so while it was nice to have kind of a space to run when one universe was, under repair, it also was really fracturing, feeling like I wasn't able to be a more unified person, that there was a person that I was when I wanted to be creative and a person that I was when I needed to kind of express things that I was observing critically, or particular things that I was observing critically. So I think being in a music department is a huge surprise to me. I never thought that this would be a space for me. When I was in undergrad making beats in my dorm room, I never thought, let me go to the music department. It didn't feel like a safe space for me, and I didn't even consider myself to be a musician for a really long time, just because of what I thought you had to know to kind of claim that title and claim that role. So when I think about my younger self, she would be so amazed, confused, perplexed, excited about my being in this space and maybe serving in the role that I would have loved someone to serve when I was making beats in my dorm room and trying to envision what this could possibly mean in the future. So I think the way that I've kind of have conceived of that space in part has been through speaking my experience out loud, which I think a lot of Black feminist thought encourages us to think about our own work and life experiences as an engagement with like critical discourses, that the politics of the things we examine are showing up in our life outcomes and circumstances and decisions. And so I think in that way, speaking as, you know, a first-gen Black girl from upstate New York, who went to this grad school and experienced these things, like laying the foundation of that story out in speaking to my experience, gives life to other folks who may kind of interact with any part of my story. I think more recently, I have really started to interface with what I feel to be the limited ways that Black women are able to show up in the hip hop space. Really trying to contend with my frustration about what I feel like is, a constriction around folks who want to talk about their bodies and their sexuality and their expression in that way, and folks who are also wanting to speak through the comic books that they read and the social theory that they're interested in exploring. And so I think through my lived experience of being a Black woman MC and seeing how my work has been received, that's kind of called me to think about my work as having a greater responsibility. That part of my role is troubling these tropes around what it means to be a rapper. And so I think when I set out to rap or to become an artist, I wasn't totally thinking about how can I create new discourses within for and within Black communities, or for and with other Black women. But through kind of performing and being connected with so many other Black women thinkers and academics and artists, I'm realizing that like we're creating the possibilities for ourselves. It feels like artists are doing the work of changing minds and changing the shape of a discourse. So, we were talking earlier about the power of stories. And I think that's one thing that artists have on lock. It's like we understand the power of stories. We're so engaged with different kinds of storytelling. And so I think we know that everything around us is a story. And so if it is a story, that means we have the power to retell it, to reshape it, to change courses, to edit it, revise it, all the things that you can do with a story. So I think it's our role to kind of enable people to interface with a new story and to provide language for that. I think that's also the work that artists are doing, is almost like facilitating, being a guide, guiding people through their feelings, through their memories, through their experiences, and providing them with kind of tools to manage that. I also have really appreciated the care with which everyone kind of shows up in this space. I was having a great conversation earlier today about how nice it is to be in an environment where I don't have to justify my relationship to art. We're not interested in this fellowship in explaining kind of what we do. We're interested in making sense of or understanding some of our decisions or intentions and who we're speaking to. But it's a completely different relationship than I think exists in other academic spaces where you're really having to say like why it's important to me and important on a broader scale that I make hip hop songs or that we paint or dance or any of those things. So like being able to start from that foundation has made it so much easier to be vulnerable and to open up and share that part of the process that can be really raw. As an artist, we can be so connected to the success or failure. I mean, I think everyone has some relationship with that. But it can be particularly fraught for artists because it feels like the thing you make is you. And so if that's not well received or that doesn't make the splash that you thought it would, I mean, that can really be present a kind of crisis. So I would hope for all of us that we can create spaces of safety around ourselves that allow us to recognize the value we have just in being on this planet and breathing in air, and that even if you once were a writer, once wrote a lot and have never written again, you're still a writer. All those things like live within you, and there are multitudes in there, and you don't have to kind of put pressure on yourself to always be performing in one role. Like there's complexity there, and that those roles are distinct from your value as a human.